Excessive car payments are without a doubt one of the biggest long-term killers of wealth. But what really is an excessive car payment? Car dealerships and loan providers will throw every trick in the book at you to try and get you to overextend your financial capabilities, and this can cause real financial disasters. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how much car you can actually afford and leave you with a completely free resource that I share with my clients to help them make the best financial decision possible. So let's jump straight into it. To start, it's important to keep in mind the key drivers of your future car payments. Unless you're paying full upfront in cash, you're going to need some form of financing to make the purchase. So the calculation of your future payments will be critical for you. The 5 factors are as follows: the loan amount, which will be the price of the car less any upfront deposits, the interest rate you pay on the loan duration, your initial down payment, and your credit score, which will affect your interest rate to some degree depending on your credit history. So with these 5 factors in mind, we can start building out what you can actually afford. Also keep these in mind when you're in the dealership, as any changes to any of these factors will be affecting how much comes out of your wallet each month. Now, the reason that this is so important to calculate yourself is that despite the rising cost of car ownership, dealerships and loan providers are very good at masking this long-term cost with short-term solutions, the most common of which is to simply offer you an extended loan term, say for example 6 years instead of 4 years, in order to lower your monthly payments but still increase the long-term interest that accrues on the loan. Now, the last important thing to consider when watching this video or any video on how much you can afford is to consider what the creator is using to formulate how much you can afford. You'll see a lot of rules being thrown around, like the 35% rule and the 10-20 rule. In my experience, some of these can be a little too aggressive, but one that seems to stand the test of time is the 24-10 rule. In short, this just means that you have 20% down payment for the car, the loan should be 4 years, and no more than 10% of your monthly income should be going towards the future transportation expense or monthly principal loan payments related to the car. I find that having a 20% down payment is proof to yourself that you can afford the car, as theoretically this shouldn't be too difficult to save. If it is, you may want to consider lowering your expectations a little. Okay, now let's get into the actual calculation of how much car you can afford. So the green cells in this file indicate values that will auto-populate based on what you input into the grey cells. So you only have to input a handful of quick figures into the grey cells, like so. You'll notice right off the bat that the previously mentioned rule doesn't actually address how much car to shoot for in terms of total initial cost. As a rule of thumb, 25 to 30% seems to be a sweet spot for most people. So taking the theoretical annual salary above of $80,000 into account and applying the 30% maximum car percentage, we come out with a value of $24,000 for the maximum car that you should be shooting to afford. Now, it's important to note that this first step is just a general guideline, which should then be adapted based on the subsequent steps. It definitely does not mean that 30% of your annual salary is definitely the amount of car that you can actually afford when factoring in the other variables which will affect your monthly total costs, which we'll address shortly. So keep that in mind. Now let's keep going. As we've now got our maximum car value in here, we can also see that the required down payment has also auto-populated using the 24-10 rule discussed earlier, which then of course means you would need a loan for the remaining $19,200. Now the next few steps are where things start to become critical for your long-term financial well-being. Now going back to the 24-10 rule, the recommended loan term is 4 years. The reason for this, before we carry on, is that this is determined for most people to be the sweet spot between not being too short of a loan term to where your monthly payments will put too much financial burden on you, but also not too long to the point that the interest which is accruing on the loan will build up to anything too unmanageable. So our total loan will be divided by 12 months to get our average annual loan repayment. Bear in mind that this will not all be going towards the loan payment. Some of this will be paying interest on the loan. We then divide this by 12 to get our monthly payment and apply the interest rate on our loan to this. This will of course depend on what interest rate you can agree on, but for argument's sake, let's say you can agree on a 5% interest rate. Your monthly payment is then calculated as follows. Just to quickly touch on this payment breakdown tab, this effectively breaks down what your monthly payments will consist of and how much will be going towards the principal, which is your actual loan balance, and what is being deducted as interest. Basically, what this is saying is that the longer the loan goes on, the more interest will accrue. However, as you can see here in the balance column, the actual balance of your loan will also obviously be decreasing due to the payments, which means that the total amount of your monthly payments being allocated to interest will slowly decrease and the amount being allocated to principal will increase. This is sometimes referred to as an amortization schedule. Okay, we're almost there. We now need to tick off the most obvious and important part, which is how much money you actually have each month. For this, I recommend using one of the many net income calculators online where you can plug in your annual salary and location and it should spit out a monthly take-home figure for you. I did this earlier assuming you're based in Ohio and came out with a monthly take-home of $5,146 based on a post-tax income of $61,000. Now, what is constantly overlooked, and what is in my opinion the biggest pitfall with car purchases, is the monthly expenses related to your car that isn't directly your payments towards the loan. I mentioned earlier that the 24/10 rule states that those expenses should not exceed 10% of your monthly take-home pay. So this here will also help you calculate that. This will likely be an estimate at first, but there are plenty of resources that can give you a really accurate guess here. You can see we've landed on $400 based off $150 of insurance, $150 gas, $50 service costs, and $50 other. We then move on to step 8, which is the final step where we analyze whether the car payments and car expenses every month are affordable for us. As mentioned earlier, 10% is our threshold. So obviously we have our threshold of $515 based off 10% of our monthly post-tax income, and then we plug in our actual for both the car payments and the car expenses. You can see here that we've got $442 for the car payments, which is within our range, and also $400 for the expenses, which is also within our range. So just an overview of what we've calculated here. We have the advised total car cost based on your salary, the actual total monthly payments you can expect to be paying, as well as the other expenses and subsequent calculation that compares these figures to your take-home net salary to determine whether the car is truly affordable for you. This should be used in addition to what the car dealership and your bank or loan provider tell you. They do not take all of these factors into account. This is an incredibly effective yet simple approach to make the decision on how much car you can truly afford, and I've left a link in the description to grab this template for yourself for free. Taking the time to watch this video thoroughly, understand the concepts, and using the free resource provided is the exact kind of direct action you need to be taking to start to gain more financial clarity and control over your lives. The concepts may seem a little foreign at first, but I promise that on your second or third time going through this, you'll be super comfortable and it will be damn near impossible for anyone to take advantage of you whilst you're in the market for a new car. The next step is to make sure your budget in totality is in order. So if you're interested in how I budget my money and you want another free template to copy, click the link here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.